The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
A top three clash with national title implications, Texas versus Ohio State.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Texas fans are trying to reverse what happened 8 months ago at the Cotton Bowl in Arlington. I guess I should start by being nice and congratulating you and your team on a national championship. That's why that one hurt Texas fans so bad. I think most people kind of thought the winner of the Cotton Bowl was going to beat Notre Dame and win it all. Obviously, the Buckeyes made the big plays late and ended up winning the national championship. So a delayed congratulations to you and your squad for getting the job done.
Man, that was a fun game to watch, not only beating Texas in the Cotton Bowl, but also, well, I can't say fun the entire time because Notre Dame did come back, but the final outcome was pretty sweet to see Ryan Day and the players that have worked so hard just to get to that moment, be at the top of the mountaintop and celebrate. And seeing Ryan Day do the media circuit, going around the different national shows and seeing the players, how they celebrated, and then the national championship celebration. It was a great ending to a 4 or 5 year run for some of those guys that had some struggles along the way. Lost to Georgia a few years prior to that. And then, of course, the two losses a year ago, the biggest one being the loss to Michigan. Then they turn around after that loss and find a way to go on a phenomenal 4-game run in the CFP to win the national championship. That was a fun run to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's dive into this Saturday's game. And I want to start with the head coach, right? A lot of new on both sides in this matchup, but obviously the head coaching matchup remains the same. Ryan Day's been at Ohio State for 7 years, and he's only lost a total of 10 games. He's 70-10, and despite all the success, there were a number of Buckeye fans seemingly calling for Ryan Day's job after that Michigan loss right before the start of the college football playoff. Just curious where Buckeyes fans are at with him now. Like, did the national title calm everyone's nerves, or is there still maybe a portion of the fan base that isn't completely bought in on Ryan Day as the guy?
I think most people are bought in on Ryan Day to be the guy. The only issue people have with Ryan Day, and I am one of those people, it's the Michigan hangup. It doesn't make any sense why Ryan Day and Ohio State have lost 4 games in a row. Even the worst Michigan team during that stretch was very, very physical and caused some issues for Ohio State, where they walked out of that game with a 13-10 win on the road for the Wolverines that day. So, I mean, that's probably the only hiccup. He's fixed some things with the defense, fix some things with the offense to where both sides of the ball are some of the best in the country. And so he's done a lot of things well, got the national championship. People don't really complain that he hasn't won the conference since 2020. They just care about the 4-game losing streak to the biggest rival.
Yeah, makes sense. And last year's game against Michigan didn't make a lot of sense, but obviously Ohio State turned it on at the right time. And you said it, that 4-game run they went on in the playoff, incredibly impressive. So Ryan Day's the same, but new coordinators, right? Brian Hartline, who's been there, he's called plays there before. He takes over the offense for Chip Kelly. Matt Patricia comes in to take over the defense. I guess your thoughts on both of those guys and what changes, if any, Texas fans and Ohio State fans should expect from the new coordinators.
I think both fan bases should expect the defense to, I'm going to say, pick up where it left off last year, because that was a very special unit. But I don't think it's going to be a major drop-off with Matt Patricia coming in, replacing Jim Knowles. It may be more creative, and it may be the same 11 or 12, 13 guys playing consistently. But you're finding out that Patricia is going to use some 3-down fronts, some 4-down fronts. I don't think you're going to see the 5-man front like it was discussed last year before the season, but you're going to find Patricia be very, very creative with the formula and the base that Ryan Day has already had there with the defense. Offensively, it's tricky because while Hartline did call plays maybe for a half or a full game a couple years ago, it's completely different when you're doing it not just against Texas, but against Grambling State and Ohio and Washington in the entire year. He does have the safety net of Ryan Day. So offensively, you have a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive play caller who's doing it for the first time, at the full-time level for the first time. But then you also have a new starting quarterback. You have new running backs. You have new offensive line starters. You're also going to have some new guys on the outside and weapons. So I think the skill positions are going to be fine. But when you have a new offensive play caller and a redshirt freshman who's a starting quarterback, I think Ohio State fans are comfortable with Heartline, but there's a level of anxiety that's rising up, as it should be, because it's hard to know what this is going to be. Is it going to be Heartline picking it up and running like he knows what he's doing and not having any issues? Or is it Ryan Day trying to pick up the pieces after Heartline struggles to get into a flow?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel a little ridiculous asking this because we're talking about the first game of the year, but is there any sort of leash maybe on Brian Hartline? Like if Ohio State's offense is really struggling in the first half, let's say Texas is up 10-3 or something at the break and Julian Sand looks bad and the run game's not going, is there a possibility that Ryan Day would consider taking over play calling that early?
Yeah, I don't think he'll have to wait till the first half for that to happen to go into the locker room and say, hey, you're not getting the job done. I would see it happening earlier than that, second quarter, midway through the second. If the offense is very, very clunky, I think you're going to find Ryan Day trying to give Heartline as much of a have the leash be a little bit longer than some may think it should be. But Day has a final say-so. Ryan Day said earlier this week that he has a final say-so with the play calling, and there is a veto power that he has. But with him having the final say, he doesn't want to jump in right away and just take over first series and say, Heartline, you ain't got it. I know we got this script. We put it together. We're very organized in our preparation for this game. But, man, this ain't working, man. The script that we even put together, it's just not flowing correctly because Day wants Heartline to have the trust that he has done a pretty good job to earn over the past few years with Day. But I do believe Day having the final say and having the veto power is big and needed, not just in this game against Texas, but in the future too. I mean, Buckeye fans remember 2015 where there were two co-offensive coordinators and the offensive flow wasn't well. Urban Meyer at times in certain games would take over play calling, but there was some confusion. There was some infighting, and I believe that was a big reason why 2015 ended the way that it did. I'm not going to say Ohio State is going to have a year in this year like it did in 2015, but I do think Urban Meyer and Day kind of worked with the play calling earlier, but Day and Heartline with their good connection is going to help the Buckeyes offense be good early in this game. I'm not saying it's going to be scoring 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first half. Don't get me wrong, but I do think they will find a way to get into a rhythm at some point in the first half.
Now, you brought up the coaches, and you also brought up Julian Sand a moment ago. I want to ask you about him, and then I'm going to ask you about Arch Manning in a moment, but we'll start with Ohio State's new quarterback, former number 1 QB in America, transferred in from Alabama after Nick Saban retired. A quarterback competition for a while. Last week, Ryan Day made the announcement that Sand was going to be the guy. How's Julian Sand been looking during camp, and what are some realistic expectations for him in his first career start?
He's looked pretty good for a guy who is in his second year in college. Him getting a full year with Ryan Day was very huge because let's say that he was at Alabama last year and then he decided to transfer after 1 full year in Tuscaloosa. I don't know if he wins the job, to be honest with you. I don't know if Ryan Day would hand the reins over to even a talented quarterback like that. Let's say he didn't play that much. I don't know if Ryan Day is like, yeah, you're ready. He is the more gifted passer, and he is the more talented quarterback. And so that's a big reason why Ryan Day won him out of high school and then was able to get him when he transferred after Nick Saban retired. I do think for Saturday, it's going to be interesting because everyone's talking about Arch Manning, and Julian Sand as well. I can't get over the talent that Texas has and what happened last year when these two teams played and how with some different things going on with the Buckeyes offensive line that it might be that some guys up front for Texas find ways to create havoc and to penetrate the Buckeyes offensive line, which disrupts the rhythm and the flow for Sand on Saturday. And so I think for Sand, if the pocket is clean and he's able to orchestrate and move around and not have to worry about a blitzer or a DN coming at him, I think he'll be able to get into a flow. But I have my own worries about the Buckeyes offensive line, and a unit that is going to start the year stronger than normal. I do wonder if they'll be able to hold up the front four and the talent really in the front for Texas for the entire 4 quarters of the game.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
FSU game is upon us.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The injuries to Jaden Roberts and Jam Miller, and maybe a little bit of James Smith being banged up, but he's fine. He's going to play. We didn't know about Tim Keenan at the time. And there are some people who have already said to me on Twitter, you're going overboard with this. I'm not going overboard. Let me tell you guys, I'm already saying Alabama 34-17, and I said 34-17 before Tim Keenan got hurt. I don't think he is going to be the difference in the game. That said, we took him to SEC Media Days. He must mean something.
Captain.
And he is a big cog in the Alabama defensive line wheel. So I hate the it's either completely black or completely white society we live in, where you go, hey, he's not the end all be all. Right. Nobody ever said that. I'm not even sure he's all SEC this year. But I'll say this, that he was starting, and I don't care who it is. If we lose a starter, it is always at least a it might not be a I mean, if Ryan Williams were out, we'd all be going, but he's not. It's Tim Keenan. And so I go,
It's a big story because he's a starter and a captain and a senior and one of Alabama's very good players. And I think on the short list of players Alabama can't lose. And why? Because if you lose Ryan Williams, you're probably replacing him with like Rico Scott. You know, you'd be okay. But there's other players on the roster you lose, and it's sort of a tumble down to the next guy, and that's kind of the situation you have there. So it is a big story, no matter what anyone thinks. And now an even bigger story to Tim Keenan, Luke, is just the fact that it's not Tim Keenan. It's Tim Keenan. It's Jaden Roberts. It's Jam Miller. Now you're out 3 guys that a few weeks ago you would have said would be starters against Florida State. Now you're down 3 of your 22. So it is significant. So significant that I think the line should move. And I don't normally say stuff like that. I think the line should move, but here's my thing. The line's 13.5. Because Alabama lost these 3 starters, I think the line should be now 12.5. And some people might think that that's not really moving. Well, it is moving the line. And I think that, to me, is representative of that there is a legitimate issue here. But like Luke was saying about how some people only see a black and white world, the way I look at it is, health-wise, people look at you like you're either perfectly healthy or you're on death's door, and not somewhere in between. So that's how they see Tim Keenan. Some people are like, this is not a thing. And other people are like, oh my gosh, should we pull the plug? And it's really somewhere in the middle of this vast expanse, this vast gulf in the middle of being perfectly healthy and being, terminal with doctors agreeing, okay, it might be time. So now, will there be replacements for Tim Keenan? Yeah, and I'm excited. See, it's kind of this thing where I'm excited to see Jeremiah Beaman play a big role. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see Edric Hill play a big role. I'm excited for the debut of Kelby Collins, who I think we'll see out there some.
By the way, let me stop you there.
Sure.
That's the one guy that, like, if you had said 4 weeks ago, all right, Tim Keenan's out, what's gonna happen? I certainly would have brought up Jeremiah Beaman. I certainly would have brought up, hey, James Smith's going to have to pick up some slack. I would have said Kelby Collins.
Yeah.
And we have heard very little Kelby Collins talk at all out of this fall camp.
That's true. That's true. Not a lot of buzz there. Now, he's going to have an opportunity, though, for anyway. It's like if Kelby's, listening to the show and upset, hey, you're going to get an opportunity. And people will then forever judge you by what they see on the field. It doesn't, the fans don't see practice. I mean, the fans see what goes on Saturdays. So you're going to get an opportunity. And Jeremiah Beeman's getting this opportunity, and Edric Hill is. I'm excited to see it. But at the same time, I also recognize, are they as good as Tim Keenan? No, they're not. They're not Tim Keenan.
Because if they were,
they would be the
starting.
They would be the starter. See, the coaches' jobs depend on playing the best players because their jobs are literally on the line. We fans have an emotional investment. They have literal dollar investment. It's their jobs. And I mean, they have to sell their house and tell their kids that they have to move away from school and lose all their friends, and meanwhile, we're like, oh, well, we're excited about Beeman. And then when Beeman's no good, we're like, we'll just go fishing, but it's kind of a
why didn't they know about Beeman?
But I'm excited about the opportunity for Richard Young. I'm excited about the opportunity for Daniel Hill. Happy for Geno Vandermark. I mean, he's a fifth-year senior getting a chance. Who would have thought? I bet when he left Michigan State, there was probably doubts in the back of his head. I might not ever start a game at Alabama. Here he is, starting the opener. Excited for him. And inside, again, Beeman, Hill. I think we'll see some Kelby Collins. How about this name? I'm going to throw a name out there that might surprise some people. But speaking of buzz, two different people close to the program have said, watch for London Simmons. Watch for London Simmons. Two people have told me this now, separately. So that would be an interesting name. Now, he's obviously not going to be first out there. I think that's going to be Beeman. I think the starting defensive line, first snap, first of the game, LT Overton at Bandit, and James Smith and Jeremiah Beeman inside. That's what I think it's going to look like initially. And I'm excited about that group. And then I'm excited. The Bandits, LT Overton's backups are fantastic. I think Jordan Renaud's good enough to start right now. I think Keon Keeley is at least good enough to play on third downs. At least. You also got Fatu Toa Henry that no one talks about. No buzz there. Now he's sort of new to the team, missed the spring. He's at Bandit. That's an interesting look. Jamarian Latham, primarily at Wolf, but said in an interview just this week, as we suspected, well, I'm at Wolf, but sometimes I play Bandit, and sometimes they put me inside, actually on third and long, which, by the way, in terms of depth inside, let's not forget, on third downs, LT Overton and Jamarian Latham can play inside on third down. So Alabama's got options. They've got bodies. What they don't have is experienced guys coming off the bench. But then I ask, in today's college football world, who the heck has experienced depth on the bench inside? Who's got 4 and 5 defensive tackles who have played extensively? Who's got that? I know Ohio State doesn't. I know Georgia doesn't. I know those programs, well, they don't. And if they don't, then who does? Clemson, they brag about their defensive line, and it is great, but they're talking about Woods and Parker. They're not talking about their 4th and 5th tackle. I bet they don't have them either.
Well, yeah, that's true. And that's where, all right, if the pessimist would say we're missing Tim Keenan and we got a bunch of guys who've never played before or have not contributed to this point, or have underwhelmed to this point, even in the case of Keon Keeley. And then you could have the optimist say, what a golden opportunity for some of these highfalutin, high-star guys that we've recruited, and it's about time that they get an opportunity to shine. So I'm stuck in the middle. I don't want to be either one of those guys because I can see both of their points, and I want to just wait and see what's going to happen Saturday. If Keon Keeley makes a huge play, okay. I can get on that Keon Keeley train just like everybody else. But if Keon Keeley doesn't make a play and doesn't even play much, then I also understand that because he hadn't done it to this point. And while there was buzz this summer about him, I think it's until he does it, he ain't done it.
That's true. That's true. Until you make a play in the game, you're unproven, and he's unproven still at this juncture. But I do think that's coming. I'm waving the flag there. This dude's good. He's going to be good.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Well, we finally got some news about Dylan Edwards.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats.
Dylan Edwards ruled out right before we got on the show. We got some reports coming out from Pete Thamel, ESPN, Pete Nakos on 3, bunch of Pete's talking about some news on the internet, and that was about Dylan Edwards discussing being out for the game on Saturday. He's also doubtful for Army. Are you really surprised that we're getting this type of news from an FCS school heading into Manhattan on Saturday?
No, I'm not, because the Dylan Edwards injury must have been pretty bad for him to sit out the rest of that game against Iowa State on Saturday. K-State hasn't divulged much of what happened. Chris Kleiman gave a really brief update in his post-game press conference. It's important, I just tweeted this out this morning, it's important to remember K-State is not obligated to drop a availability report this week because it's not a conference game. So this will probably be the only real update we get on Dylan's status this week. And yeah, it's not too surprising. It is unfortunate though, because this was already a really thin backfield, in my opinion. Like, there were already questions if Dylan Edwards was this lead back, 3-down guy. I didn't think he was, but I thought that him and Joe Jackson would be able to play really well together. And now it's Joe's show. And if Joe Jackson doesn't come up big on Saturday and against Army, then shoot, who's it going to be? You know, you look at Antonio Martin, the transfer out of Sela. He could be somebody who steps up. JB Price, Levon Rice, 2 guys who are younger backs, unproven, but K-State believes in them enough to dress them and run them out there. So it's concerning. It's really concerning. This was, besides quarterback, probably the one position group where K-State couldn't afford an early injury, and now it happened.
Yeah, it seems like a huge hit. I mean, every player, every coach from the post-conference pressers in Dublin and on Monday's conversations when they returned to Manhattan, everybody on the offensive side at least said that the reason that offense struggled early in the first half is because they had so many design plays for Dylan Edwards, and ultimately that's why they struggled. Ultimately, that's why it was a 7-7 game for a very long time, and then they found a way to lose that football game, unfortunately. There was some calls towards the play calling decisions throughout the game that you can point fingers at. But again, not having Dylan Edwards makes that very difficult. Now you move into this game, of course, against an FCS opponent. And it's not in Dublin, Ireland. It's in Manhattan, Kansas against North Dakota. But you have a clear view of what this running back room will look like heading into that game, knowing that Dylan Edwards will not be participating. You're not getting a shock factor on your offense right from the get-go. Because Joe Jackson and Devin Rice were decent, but that ball did not move with the running game. Do you see that improving this week? Maybe because of the opponent, but also because of that, the fact that you just have an idea of no Dylan Edwards in the lineup.
Yeah, and a little bit of both, but we have to remember Iowa State has a really good front seven. Dominique Orange is the best defensive tackle in the Big 12. So for K-State to have struggled on the ground after losing their lead back, it's unfortunate that the game went that way, but it's not all that surprising. That could have been expected by anyone who watched the game. As for this week, you hope the run game improves against an inferior opponent. I mean, this is North Dakota, not North Dakota State. Chris Kleiman has coached against this team this program a million times too. So K-State really needs to make a statement this week, and that begins on the ground. People are going to want to see Avery Johnson running the ball even more. And then, Joe Jackson and some of the younger backs getting involved. But the thing that concerns me about what you mentioned with the plays that were drawn up for Dylan Edwards is, if one player is taking up that much of your playbook, then this isn't that deep of an offense, and this isn't that diverse of an offense. And if one player not named Avery Johnson was relied upon that much to where it threw a wrench in the whole playbook's plan for at least the first half, then that's pretty tough for me to wrap my head around. So maybe it'll be a little bit of a blessing in disguise with Edwards out, in the sense that the offense can find its identity away from having a fantastic lead back who does the dirty work on first and second down. So, but yeah, Edwards being out really stinks for this team, really stinks for that position group in particular. But I do think K-State is better equipped to deal with it on Saturday than they were last weekend.
That's a really good point, too, saying that if you are utilizing or thinking that you're going to utilize Dylan Edwards so much, then you don't have a backup game plan. That's a problem. I'm hoping that's a week 0 woe, Jason. I hope that's just the fact that they were so busy planning for 16 months. They continue to talk about how getting ready to Dublin, and hopefully that changes when they get back to this normal routine. And I'm hoping, I'm not on the coaching staff, so I feel like I can overlook this. I'm hoping that they can take care of business very handily against a first-year coach in Eric Schmidt in North Dakota, and then move forward Army and the rest of the Big 12 schedule on the way. Let's get the quick thought here on Avery Johnson. You talked about how you want to see him run the ball more. I couldn't agree more, but he was not very successful in running the ball against Iowa State. You mentioned Iowa State's defensive front. They had a great game on Saturday. Dominique Orange is insane. One of the coolest nicknames in college football, too, at Big Citrus. Gotta love that. But Avery Johnson, of course, didn't get some of those fourth down runs, those calls. He only rushed for 21 yards, had a great game through the air. Getting him more aggressive on the running side of things, especially with Dylan Edwards not being there, especially with that lack of explosiveness on the offense, that's got to be Matt Wells stepping up, making some aggressive decisions. How do we get the most out of Avery Johnson for the rest of the season? Because I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, and dare I say, a dark horse candidate for the Heisman. He made no turnovers. He's still in a good spot for that.
I agree. No, I think that talent-wise, Avery Johnson is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I don't think that's too bold of a statement. Where my concern is right now is, like, how much trust does this coaching staff deserve? Like, overall, I mean, that game on Saturday was one of the most poorly coached K-State football games that I have ever seen. Between the play calls, just in general, I mean, bland, and then in the second half, the creativity comes, but it was really too little too late. So you hope to see more of that creativity, but, like, do we really believe that we're going to see enough of it? You know, and as for the fourth down play calls, like, going for it on fourth down at your own 30 just sets up a defense that's played really, really well to fail. And, you know, it's not the offense's fault fully when the coaches are the ones putting them in that position, but it just kind of goes back to my point of, like, do we believe in Matt Wells to unlock Avery Johnson's full potential, or is it going to be one of those situations where Avery Johnson unlocks his own full potential from sort of these broken down plays where he's able to make something out of nothing, or plays where on his own volition he scrambles, where he's making that decision himself and it's not necessarily the play call? Because based on what we saw on Saturday, the play calling is not going to unlock the run game for Avery Johnson, at least not in a Big 12 game.
Yeah, I agree. If he's got to rely on broken plays, not only is he going to be nowhere near conversations for being one of the top players in college football, but that woe factor of how fans feel about where Kansas State sits and probably projected around 8-4 is probably the ceiling, if that's what we have to rely on. And that is definitely something we don't want Kansas State to have.